In 1863, John D. Rockefeller, the Clark brothers, and a chemist Samuel Andrews established an oil refinery as a firm in Cleveland, Ohio, which led to be the largest oil factory in the world. The title Standard was selected to indicate the standardization of oil factories and products. 2 years later, John D. Rockefeller bought the Clark shares and named the factory Standard Works. The development and growth of Standard Oil occurred predominantly after the Civil War. It was the time frame of quick economic increase, population growth, and escalation of large companies and monopolies over oil, steel, and railroads in the United States, called the Gilded Age. Rockefeller was an icon of this period between 1870 and 1900s. The name The Gilded Age came from the title of Mark Twain's book, Gilded. It refers to something covered in golden, but not golden on the inside. This period was one of the rapid growth for the American economy, but also for conflict. America's industrial economy exploded, which allowed opportunities for many to build great fortunes. On the other hand, it left many farmers and middle-lower class workers struggling to survive. For more than a century, the company's wealth attracted attention and suspicion. Later, Rockefeller became one of the most hated men in America. He was considered ruthless as a whirlwind and a thief of baron of the industrial age. This meant that he obtained his wealth through monstrous means, like bankrupting smaller companies in for his own company's gain. Rockefeller was known for cheating and stealing ideas of other industries. He purchased all the oil barrels in the market so that the opponents would have nowhere to store the oil, nor be able to ship it. Rockefeller built his business close to a new rail line which linked Cleveland with the oil area, and he recognized that refining oil instead of drilling it is how steady money would be made. In 1871, he entered into a secret alliance called the South Improvement Company with major railroads that ran through the railways in Cleveland, Pennsylvania, the Erie, and New York Central. The railroads ensured that Standard Oil illegally received large, regular shipments of oil and secured transport rates far lower than Standard Oil's competitors in order to drive them out of business. Rockefeller was considered an economic snake because of this great economic conspiracy. From the 1880s through the 1900s, when Standard Oil dominated the American market, oil prices remained at approximately $1 per barrel. It's said that the company's fuel is financially growth by the expansion of markets with cheap oil, rather than earning money from high oil prices. Rockefeller would often tell his colleagues,
"Give the poor man his cheap light, gentlemen."
This was easy for him to say, as he became the first American billionaire ever. The reason he started making so much money is because Standard Oil started to use effective methods to illegally dominate the market. This included buying all chemicals necessary to refine oil and buying all oil barrels in the market so that competitors would have nowhere to store it or ship it. The company developed so quickly that it moved to New York in 1883, where it was situated in the center of the U.S. economy. Because of the unfair play for the Standard Oil, the company was highly criticized and ended up being involved in several lawsuits, which eclipsed its dissolution into 33 smaller companies. Within a year of Standard's downfall, the stock market value of the minor companies doubled.
Rockefeller wanted to remain invisible, but because of the power he gained through Standard Oil, he soon became the target of suspicion. From hearing about lawsuits and investigations, began to challenge the Standard Oil empire. Rockefeller was called to testify in many forums, yet constantly lied in order to escape the law. For example, he claimed that he took no part in the Southern Improvement Company. Historian David Chalmers wrote,
John D. Rockefeller and his associates did not build the Standard Oil Company in the broad rooms of Wall Street banks and investment houses, water their stock, and rig the market. They fought their way to control by bribe, blackmail, espionage, and price cutting, and perhaps even more important, by ruthless, never slothful efficiency of organization and production.
Nevertheless, during the 1870s to 1890s, Rockefeller and his partners became more dominant by transforming Standard Oil into a trust, meaning many people could own parts of the company. To hide these types of activities, Standard Oil would buy smaller companies, which bought smaller companies in order to hide the real benefactors and the real owner of such business behavior. This type of governance is called a trust. So after a while, the scheme was made public by journalists first, and then the US government acted by bringing an anti-monopoly antitrust law that did not allow companies like this to exist, in order to allow fair market play for other companies.
Monopoly is a set of conditions on the market where some supplier of commodities has a complete ownership of the supply. It can be a company, it can be a person, it can be a big company, it can be a small company. It doesn't really matter. It depends on the size and that the fact that it is having pretty much as a position as a single supplier. So it can actually dominate the supply and the pricing on the market.
In total, there were 19 trustees managing the corporation on behalf of all shareholders. 82 trusts with a total of $1.2 billion had been formed, plus an additional 234 trusts that were worth more than a total of $6 billion. But little did they know that the downfall of the huge Standard Oil empire was soon to come. For in 1890, Senator John Sherman of Ohio initiated an antitrust law in Congress. Although U.S. Presidents Grover Cleveland and William McKinley did not enforce the law, in the 1890s the Sherman Act became the base of American antitrust policies in the future. So Standard Oil Trust changed its name to Standard Oil Interests, with 20 companies branching off it.
Based on the antitrust law, the US Supreme Court decided to break up Standard Oil into 33 smaller companies, which are some mega companies today like Exxon and Chevron. And you, I'm sure, also know Mobil, Marathon, Amoco was one as well. Fairly large companies that exist in the oil industry or have existed in the oil industry. The funniest part from all of it is actually that Rockefeller itself became, because of the splits, became the richest man in the world.
By 1897, John D. Rockefeller retired, being less than 60 years old, as the world's first billionaire, handing over the power to John D. Archbold. John Rockefeller was the largest stockholder of Standard Oil even after he had retired, which, from the public standpoint, was a mistake because people still believed that he had retired, which is why continued attacks on Standard Oil continued to grow. Public opinion continued to accumulate against Standard Oil, and this dislike led to legal assaults that would forever change the company.